Let's talk about the last day of January 2026. Because on that day, a storm of violence erupted across Pakistan's largest province. For 40 brutal hours, a huge, coordinated assault just raged on. We're going to break down exactly what happened right here. Think about that. For nearly 2 full days, this massive coordinated assault unfolded all across Pakistan's southwestern province of Balochistan. This wasn't just a single incident. No, this was a sustained, relentless wave of attacks. And the human cost? Well, it was absolutely immense. By the time the dust finally settled, the death toll had climbed to at least 193 people. And that number tragically includes not just militants and security forces, but so many civilians just caught in the crossfire. And you have to understand the sheer scale of this was just incredible. These weren't isolated attacks. No, they were spread across at least 9 different districts. It was a stunning display of coordination that stretched the security forces to their absolute limit. So all of this just begs the real question, right? How did something like this even happen? Who was behind it? And what does it all tell us about the long-simmering conflict in this really volatile region? Okay, so let's get into the specifics. It all kicked off on January 31st, 2026. A separatist group, you've probably heard of them, the Balochistan Liberation Army, or BLA, launched this whole series of simultaneous attacks. It was an operation they later called Operation Herof Phase II. I mean, just look at this list. The range of targets was absolutely staggering. We're talking militants, hitting police stations and paramilitary bases with everything they had. Guns, grenades, even suicide vests. They attacked a high-security prison and reportedly freed over 30 inmates. They even went after government buildings and tore up railway tracks, basically paralyzing transport across the entire region. So what about the human toll? In the middle of all this chaos, in the fog of war, getting clear, reliable numbers is next to impossible. What we're left with are 2 dramatically different stories about the casualties. And this is where it gets really telling, because the numbers themselves paint 2 completely different pictures. Just look at this disparity. Pakistani officials are saying 45 militants were killed, while the BLA claims they killed over 200 security personnel and only lost 18 of their own fighters. It's a perfect example of the information war that's running right alongside the actual fighting on the ground. So it's not just about the numbers. It's about the narratives. The Pakistani government and the BLA, well, they're telling 2 totally opposing stories of what went down, and more importantly, why. On the government side, the message was loud and clear: total defiance. Balochistan's chief minister, Sarfraz Bukti, framed the whole thing as an unwavering war on terror, and he promised to eliminate the threat, no matter what it takes. So let's really break these 2 narratives down. On one hand, you have the Pakistani government saying, hey, this was a huge counter-terror victory. We stopped a desperate assault by terrorists who were using civilians as human shields. But on the other hand, the BLA is framing it as a planned military offensive, a direct retaliation for state actions, and a successful expansion of their operations across a much wider territory. But here's something that was a huge tactical shift, something that really changes the game. For the first time on this scale, the BLA deployed female suicide bombers, or Fidyayin, from their elite Majid Brigade. Naming fighters like 24-year-old Asifa Mangal and Hawa Baloch is a powerful propaganda move. But it's also a serious operational escalation, designed to create maximum shock and get past security that's usually focused on looking for male attackers. And, of course, the fallout from these attacks didn't just stay within Pakistan's borders. Oh no, it went international, and it went international fast. Officials in Islamabad were very quick to start pointing the finger at foreign powers, claiming there was external support for the whole insurgency. And to understand how Pakistan is framing this for the world, you really need to know this term, Fitna al-Hindustan. It's a specific label the state uses to cast these Baloch insurgent groups as instruments of India, which effectively turns the whole conflict into a proxy war. So who are they blaming? Well, Pakistani officials pointed the finger directly at 2 of their neighbors. They claimed that India's intelligence agency is backing the BLA and that the militants' handlers are actually sitting in Afghanistan. Now, for their part, both India and Afghanistan have consistently and flatly denied these allegations. You can bet that violence on this scale got the world's attention, and fast. The United States, which actually designated the BLA as a terrorist organization back in 2025, strongly condemned the attacks. So did Iran, France, the European Union, and a bunch of other nations. all of them expressing solidarity with Pakistan. But here's the thing you have to remember. These attacks, they didn't just happen in a vacuum. They're the latest, and maybe the most violent, eruption in a conflict that has been simmering and boiling over for generations. I mean, this conflict has deep, deep roots. We're talking going all the way back to the 1970s. By the 2000s, groups like the BLA were already stepping up their attacks on state infrastructure. The U.S. terror designation in 2025 was a huge moment, and it led, in many ways, directly to this massive assault in 2026. So what is really at the heart of this struggle that's been going on for decades? Well, if you look at it from the separatists' point of view, it really boils down to three core issues. They argue that the province's vast natural resources are being exploited with very little benefit to the local people. They feel politically sidelined by the central government, and their ultimate demands, well, they range from wanting much greater autonomy to wanting complete independence from Pakistan. But just as the attack was massive, the state's response was, well, it was just as fierce. With 145 militants reportedly killed in just those 40 hours, one analyst called it the deadliest single day for militants in decades. And that really tells you everything about both the scale of the attack and the ferocity of the crackdown that followed. And all of this, it leaves us with one final and really crucial question. After an escalation this massive, after such a brutal crackdown, and with two completely irreconcilable stories about what happened, what could possibly be next for Balochistan's violent and tragic decades-long struggle?